So tonight's topic is the power in believing, which I wanted to bring up my granddaughter because that's one of the things that I have in my life that I feel really blessed about. And those of you who have children, you understand when you have children and you believe in them, it transforms them. And they seek, you can use any word you want, believing, faith, encouragement, hope. I'm just going to go with the word believing because that's the one that really appeals to me. When it comes to believing in somebody, I think of our children, your grandchildren. It's easier to believe in your grandchildren than your children because your children have expectations. Grandchildren, they can do whatever they want. They're beautiful. And we can give them back.
Yes.
They don't live with us. So I was thinking about her today. Well, actually the whole weekend. She's priceless. I haven't had her over in a while. I love when I get the phone calls. Like it's her mom's phone, but I'll hear this little voice. Anne-Marie, can you come pick me up for the weekend? Click. All right, and who are you? They haven't obviously told her how to say, this is Abby, but it's cute. So when I picked her up, even at the age of 7, she's starting to lose the faith in, fairy tales and that magic. She's starting to lose that. But there's a little bit still sprinkled in her life. So we were watching Finding Nemo. That's her favorite, which is quite funny because her older sister, who's 16 now, it was her favorite movie too. And Abby's favorite song is Just Keep Swimming, which made me laugh because really there's 3 words to the whole song. How do you not remember that song? And so the whole melody we're just did, and then the rest of the night, Just Keep Swimming. And I went, I remember why I stopped playing that video. Because it just keeps going and going. But even in that, the faith that the father, believing that the father was going to find Nemo, and that Nemo would believe in that his dad was coming to get him. And I remember the scene where Nigel, the pelican, comes over and says, Nemo, your dad's fighting the ocean, he's coming over here. And he's like, what? And he goes, yeah, I heard he took on 3 sharks. And Nemo's like, no, he wouldn't have done that. Like he didn't have any faith that his father would do it until Nigel started saying and describing Marlin to him. He's like, that's my dad. And it totally transformed his character. And that's when I was thinking about how Hollywood, Disney does this especially. When a character feels belief or faith in something, they're transformed. And they find courage. They find conviction that they may not have thought was there. Even Ellen DeGeneres' character, which cracks me up. Mm-hmm. Is it Blue? Is it just Blue? No, hi, what's her name?
Dory.
Dory, thank you. Even Dory, even though that she's so goofy, she has faith, unbelievable faith. Can you just imagine what it was like, or what it would be like, to live life with a short-term memory? That's got to be awfully scary. Now, having hands-on experience with George and dealing with his dementia, that was enough to really rile me. But can you imagine somebody who actually has that all the time? I do know somebody in my life, she'll call me and then hang up, and then she'll call, did I just call you? Yeah, we spoke for half an hour, and then hang up, and then like a half an hour later, she calls back again, did I call you today? Yes, you did. So that's, it could be frustrating if you don't understand it. But she has to have a sense of belief, too, to get through the day. Can you just imagine? Anyway, I've made my point. So, the power of believing. Now, in the email that I sent out about believing, I feel fortunate that I've had a great number of individuals who've believed in me. And it really did transform my life. The times when I was going through the hardship, I did not recognize the belief or the power of the person who was there. But when I look back and reflect on my life, that's when I see it. That's when I see, oh wow, there's that pivotal point right there. Had I known, maybe I would have grown a little faster. That's my impatience. But, if you start picking shoes, well, maybe if I just did that. But all through my life, I feel like I've been sprinkled along with people who've believed in me. They've showed up out of nowhere. Some people who just show up and disappeared, and I didn't even know their names, but it was just a word or a phrase that they said that captured my attention. You know what this is like, I'm certain. All of you have had this experience of when someone looks you in the eyes and says, I believe in you. Now I'm using, again, as I said, the words believe, but it's an expression of love. That's really what it is. I'm expressing my love for you, my support for you. But it got me thinking, what is it? Why is it the simple words, 4 words, I believe in you, why does that stoke a fire within another individual when we say it to them? Why do those 4 words move people? Why do those 4 words give us courage? We could say you can do it and cheer somebody on, but the 4 simple words of I believe in you transforms us. So that's really what got me started thinking about this workshop. I know there's been a lot of risks that I've taken where I've had the belief in myself. Well, I think it was probably just stupidity that I would just, or arrogance. Well, nothing's going to happen, and I just go do it. But it really would seem different when I had somebody believing that I could do it. It really made a difference in what I was doing. I came across a quote from Leo Buscaglia. How many people know who he is? My mother knew him. And again, here's another thing. Had I known who he was, I would have paid more attention to him. But I didn't. It was this old man who quoted a lot of stuff and whatever. And my mom was thrilled about him. But so I found this quote from him. He said, "Too often we underestimate the power of a touch, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, an honest compliment, or the smallest act of caring, all of which have the potential to turn a life around." And that really drew to me my life. I started thinking about that. All the kindness is really what it ends up being, all the kindness that I've experienced throughout my life. Now, many of you know I grew up in an extremely abusive environment, and I used to tell George, I got all my pain and suffering by the time I was 16, I was done, and the rest of it's free, clear sailing. That was something I told myself to get through life. But I really had a great deal of hardships when I was growing up. Physical abuse, broken bones, blah, blah, blah. And so, of course, the torment of kids, making fun of the funny-looking kids. So I went through that whole regime as well. And when I sat down with George one day, we decided he wanted me to make a list of how many of the abuse environments that I could remember, the events that I can remember. And I came up with 4 pages, 8.5 by 11, 8.5 by 14, a legal size, 4 pages, front and back, 1 line of every event that I would remember. And I, in my little organized fashion, I had the one-time events, the daily events, the things that happened maybe 2 or 3 times a year, birthday events. I mean, it was just remarkable how much I remembered. On a side note, I found out that my dad's father had a photographic memory, so I feel like I got part of that passed down to me, and that's why I remember things. So when I stand in a classroom, I may look like a genius. It's just my genes. So, hey, that was kind of funny. All right, maybe not. So, painkillers haven't kicked in yet. When I was thinking about how in my childhood, for the first 16 years of my life, it was torture, scary. I lived in fear on a daily basis. And looking back, there were people who were there. Every once in a while, there would be somebody there. I remember this one man from my mom's church. He had said to me that I had charisma. And I didn't understand what charisma meant. And he said, well, go look it up. And I got really pissed at him. Like, well, just tell me. What do you mean go look it up? So then I had to go to the book and the dictionary. I never understood a dictionary. How do you find a word when you don't know how to spell it, but the dictionary is supposed to teach you how to spell? I don't get that. Just hours you spend looking for, so charisma, I thought it was spelled with a K. Hours I'm looking through all the freaking K's and I can't find it. And then I went, oh, C. Well, I went back to him and he said, no, it's CH. I'm like, oh. Anyway, so I looked it up. And just I don't recall what the definition said, but I do remember it had to do with the idea that people gathered to you and you made them laugh or you made them feel comfortable. You made people feel comfortable. And I was stunned that this man would say that to me because I was such an introvert at such an early age. I didn't understand how he saw that in me. But that was just one man, and I've never forgotten that. I remember a neighbor one time who had pulled me aside and said, are you okay? Like, she must have known something was going on inside of the house. And that was just amazing to me that somebody would just ask me if I was okay. I just think that was the first time someone ever asked me if I was okay, and that's why it stuck in my mind. Somebody was asking me, are you okay? So as I said, sprinkled throughout my whole life, I've had angels. I'm just going to call them angels. People have just shown up without any expectation. The greatest experience that I had, one of the greatest experience I've ever had of these, by the time I got to college, now some of you have probably heard this story, so please forgive me if I and repeating it. And those of you who haven't, enjoy the story. So I got to college. Most people who have an abusive environment are introverted. When I got to my senior year, I discovered alcohol and became very funny. So I learned humor was a good way to deflect attention and gain popularity. So I went from, within 2 years, I went from the biggest geek in school to one of the most popular people there. So my class, we had over 500 and close to 520 kids. I was nominated class friend. I mean, I didn't win, but I was nominated, one of 6 people nominated for class friend. That was remarkable for me, remarkable thinking I went from nobody wanted to be around me to, oh, everyone likes and I make people laugh. By the time I got to college, you know how, have you ever had this experience when you've been held back for so long and all of a sudden you get to do something you've always wanted to do but you've had to hold back and you swing to the other side? You know, it's like when you can eat as much ice cream as you can whenever you can. The first time you discover that on your own and we get sick to our stomachs, but we just keep eating because we have the freedom. So when I went to college, freedom. I had freedom. I went from having a 10 o'clock curfew at the age of 18 to being in a dorm room where you could do whatever you wanted to. And in Buffalo, the bars didn't close till 4 in the morning. Some of them actually served you breakfast to make sure that you were going to be okay on the way back to school. I was in heaven. I mean, just so that was going from extreme restriction to extreme liberty. So, you know, of course, learning how to take care of yourself and everything, I'll spare you the details, but my first semester, I barely passed. I was like put on, what is that word? Probation, yeah. See, I was so resistant, I don't remember the word. My first semester, I had like a 0.6 grade point average for the first semester. Not that I'm a bad student. My final grade, I had A's. I was a 4.0. I think I graduated 4.8 or something like that. I don't remember. But anyway, I just didn't go to school. I didn't go to class. Why should I? I'm having fun. By the time I got to my junior year, now this is Buffalo, I moved off campus, had my very first apartment, and living with a bunch of girls. I never had to pay rent. What? So any money I had, let's go party. Hey, pizza. So money went in and out faster than you could ever even say the word money. So I did no concept of saving or anything. First day of school, junior year, been up at the class up in Buffalo for about a week now, and I had spent all my money probably in 1 week. For the whole month, I'd spent all my money. Don't be shaking your head at me, Judy. I did. So I show up into class. It's a broadcasting class. I went to school for broadcasting. So it's back in the days where we didn't have digital cameras. They were the tube cameras. Those of us remember the old tube. It was all tube, so the studio had to be cold. And the lights, we had a whole huge floor, the whole bank of lights up above. So the temperature was very cold. Now I'm cool, so I have a denim jacket and that's it, in Buffalo when it's 60 degrees outside and it's raining. And I had to walk from my apartment to school, which is about 2 miles, in the rain. I'm hungover, I'm starving, and I'm freezing, and I'm wet, and I walk into this classroom that is ice cold. I tempted to turn around and say, forget this, except I didn't use those words, and turn around and go back home. And I thought, no, I'm all the way here. Let's just do it. It was a long class. It was a class that was just, I think, 3 hours. It was worth a lot of credits. Anyway, it was my first TV production class, and there was 2 teachers up in the front of the room. One of the teachers kept looking back at me. Now, unfortunately, I pretty much made a name for myself being a sarcastic little comedian with the teachers, so I had a tendency to speak back to teachers, not in a polite way, attempting to be funny, but making fun of them instead of being nice. Hard to believe I was this type of person, right? So usually what would occur is on the first day of school, I'd banter back and forth with the teacher, and then we'd see who'd be putting each other in their place, and then we'd proceed on. Some teachers really liked it, and I really had a good banter, and some teachers were so offended. They really went out of their way to diminish and demean me as much as they could. And I could always tell what kind of teacher it was going to be within the first 2 or 3 comments, and then I'd back down or participate. Well, this one teacher just kept looking back at me, and I was trying to size him up. First of all, 2 teachers never had that. And this guy keeps looking back at me, and I don't get it. He hasn't said a word yet. I'm waiting, and he's not speaking. Now, remember, I'm freezing. My stomach is growling. My head is pounding. And so I kind of figured, I'll just look around the room, and I knew all the kids. And this teacher walked past me, the one that was looking at me, and I thought, okay, good. The other one didn't seem to care I was there, which I was very happy about. So I slipped down in my seat, closed my eyes a little bit, just thought about how much longer do I have to be here, thinking about where am I going to get something to eat, whose house can I go crash at, blah, blah, blah. Within about 5 minutes, I felt something on my shoulders and I jumped. I thought I fell asleep, which I probably did, and I jumped up. And when I jumped up, what I discovered is that teacher who had walked past me had placed a thermal sweatshirt over my shoulders. He walked over in front of me and put a cup of hot chocolate on my desk and then proceeded back to the front of the room, never said a word. I was dumbfounded, absolutely dumbfounded. What the heck? So my little brassness went, what's up with you, old man? And then quickly decided that's not worth it. And I put the jacket on and wrapped my hands around that hot chocolate. I was befuddled, totally befuddled. What is this man doing? So I looked back up at the front of the room, and he just turned and looked at me and winked. He smiled and winked. It was a moment that is etched in my mind as if it happened yesterday. That began a very long and beautiful relationship with him and his wife and their family. I became part of their family. So his name was Art, and I called him my adopted dad. He took care of me for the next 2 years of school. What I discovered was Art would oftentimes look out in the classroom and see somebody who he knew people were ignoring or just pushing through. Art actually was more than a teacher. He didn't stand before the class to teach his knowledge. He wanted to help people be better people too. So he really took his job to the next level. So that was my first introduction of a second mile person and my first introduction to unconditional love. Nothing was required of me. Nothing. I mean, I just sat there and he just gave me a cup of hot chocolate and a thermal sweatshirt. And then we kind of had this little running, standing thing where the sweatshirt and hot chocolate would always be there. I'd walk in and that it would be sitting there waiting for me. It was just really priceless. So with that, my first response was to, whoa, be defensive. What do you want? What's going on? And then the more I began to trust him and understand he wasn't going to hurt me, there's an adult who's not going to hurt me, I discovered a whole new world. Like I said, he had 4 daughters. He would call me the daughter he never had. His daughters, one daughter was going to school with me. She had gone back to school, so she had 6 kids already. And then another daughter was living with him, and she had 2 kids. So I would spend weekends there, and then eventually the summer there, and then another summer there, living with them. Am I cutting in and out? No. Okay. So anyway, back to Leo Biscali's quote. Too often we underestimate the power of a touch, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, an honest compliment, or the smallest act of caring. I do not think that Art thought, oh, if I give her a sweatshirt and a cup of hot chocolate, we're going to be the best of friends. It was in his nature. His nature was to just give. He saw somebody in need, just gave, didn't matter. Didn't cost him anything, just gave because he could. That's what Art taught me. Turned my entire life around. I credit where I am today, the first step was Art. That's my adopted dad. So the reason why I'm telling you this whole story is because I've recently discovered he's dying. The youngest daughter contacted me and let me know that hospice is already in place. If I want to come and see him, say goodbye, now's the time to do it. So he's been on my mind. And what's also been on my mind is the legacy that he created. I know I was just one of a list of students, but I wonder how many other students carried on what he did. So he took me in, so I took in kids. I can't have kids, so I took in kids. I've taken in 14 kids so far. Just kids that I've met randomly. George's grandchildren became my daughters. Their children are my grandchildren. It's just passed on. And what I've also found out, I had this one girl, she was a friend of my roommate's. So my roommate, Karen, had a friend, Susan, whose daughter was Tammy. Not that you need to know this, but I wanted to get you to Tammy. So Tammy was 12 when I met her. She came and lived with me. And then I took her all the way back to New York where her dad lived. She hitchhiked her way all the way back to Arizona when she was 14, I think. And then came and lived with me again. And came through Omega. And one of the things that, she was probably the hardest one I've had, is because I had to kick her out. We had an agreement in my house, no drugs, no guys in the house without me being there. You don't have to use my car unless you let me know. And she broke every rule. So I had to kick her out. The final straw is I walked in, she's dropping acid in my bed with her boyfriend. Nice image. So had to kick her out. That was really the hardest thing to do. But my friend, my roommate, remained in touch with her. And Tammy started doing what I did. She started taking in kids. When she finally got herself settled down, I heard she's taken in at least 3 or 4 kids. 2 of them she actually adopted, which I never took that final step to do. Now, not saying that that was because of me, it was because of art. Art instilled that in me, and I passed it down to her. Miranda, another one of my kids, same thing. She's taken in kids to come and stay with her just to give, to take care of them. So I often call it the legacy of art, that I'm passing this down. And I wonder, where did he get it from? Because as far as I can recall, I've never heard a story of anybody taking care of him when he was growing up. So it's almost as if he was born with this. He was born with this gift of recognizing and opening up his heart and his home. And thankfully, he married a woman, Joan, who was equally open to it. She never said, "Oh, not another kid." Never. She'd walk in the house, welcome you with open arms, part of the family here, go do your laundry. She would send food to school with him to make sure I was eating. On the weekends, like I said, they'd always make sure I was at their house on the weekends and whatnot. So I truly did become part of my family. It was my second family. But it was my first introduction to loving because you simply can. Unconditional love. It truly was. It changed my life. Now, I want to switch gears for a moment. Do you think it's too early to start talking about Christmas? It's July. Does anybody know the movie Miracle on 34th Street?
Yeah.
Oh, good. You all should know that. Classic. It's a classic Christmas story. Do you know what the main theme is during that movie? Besides Christmas. The underlying theme, there's an underlying current. It's believing. I believe in you. As a matter of fact, there are 3 times when that sentence is actually stated. The idea is, most of you know the story, Kris Kringle is a gentleman who believes he's Santa Claus, gets hired by Macy's to play Santa Claus, and then starts sending the customers to other stores, because it's not about commercialism, it's about the kids and whatnot. And then he's put on trial for insanity, because people think he's insane, because anybody who believes in Santa Claus think they're insane, like if you believe you're Santa Claus. So during this scene, during the movie, there's lots of little events of where people express believing. One of the very first ones is the little girl from Holland, doesn't speak any English, and she's standing there saying, no, Santa Claus, Santa Claus, and the mother's saying, I'm sorry, she doesn't speak any English, but she believes that you're Santa Claus, and she sits on his lap, and what does he do? He starts singing Dutch to her, and they start singing a song. He speaks Dutch and starts singing Dutch to her. Now, the little girl, Susan, the character Susan in there, played by Natalie Wood, dumbfounded. How is this man? She's watching this whole thing unfold, and it just, her mother has told her there is no such thing as Santa Claus, and here's this nice little old man and this little girl who believes in him. So it starts her doubting her mother. Then, the next time you hear it, this is actually the first time you hear it, is when Kris Kringle is locked up in Bellevue, and Fred comes over and he says, oh, but I believe you. You're the greatest lawyer. You can get me out of here. I believe in you. And just the way the camera is, you just see his little eyes sparkle when he goes, but I believe in you. And Fred doesn't even know what to say after that. He just goes, okay, and goes away and decides he's going to be the lawyer for Kris Kringle, which of course, he ends up getting him free. And then of course there's another scene in there where Natalie Wood writes a letter to him saying, I know Mommy says you're on trial and I know you're sad, but I just want to let you know I believe in you. And then the character Maureen O'Hara, Doris, writes also, I believe in you too. So that's like 3 times you actually hear that sentence and they send it off. And when Fred gives him, Kris Kringle, the letter, he said, no, this is all I need. It was just, that was a beautiful line too. It probably is mostly often overlooked because you're so wrapped up in the story. But all he had is that letter in him where somebody said, I believe in him. He said, no, this is all I need. I don't care if we win or lose. This is all I need. So that's a beautiful idea. And most people probably don't recognize the fact that that movie is all about believing in something, giving your heart to someone. Faith is, what's the line? He said, faith is believing. Mommy said, faith is believing in something when common sense tells you not to. That was the line that she said. So it introduces faith and believing. Now, whether it's a Christmas classic or something with special effects like the Transformers, Hollywood really does a good job about implementing the theme of believing in someone. In the Transformers, Bumblebee believes in the human counterpart. I don't know what the guy's name is who's driving the car. Not really a big fan of Transformers, but I had to say that for the kids out there. But I started thinking about other movies, like one of my favorite movies, The Hunt for Red October. Anybody familiar with that? Sean Connery. He looks so good. So Sean Connery is defecting. He's a communist defecting. He's got a nuclear submarine, and he tells Russia he's defecting. Russia tells the United States he's going to blow up the United States, and there's only one man who believes that he's defecting, which is Jack, and I don't remember, Alec Baldwin, thank you. And Alec Baldwin is trying to convince the United States Defense Department that he's defecting. So one man believing, actually, he convinced one very, very important scene. He finally gets onto the submarine Dallas. They know where the Red October is. They're right in front of them. They're going to blow them out of water because the captain has orders to shoot. And Alec Baldwin plays a trick and says, has he done a crazy Ivan yet? Because he's going to go starboard, because he always goes starboard on the bottom half of the hour, which was a lie, but he played this little trick. And the captain believed in that so much that he said, okay, that's it, let's trust him. And eventually. Now, of course, it's just Hollywood, but it's a good example. Pretty Woman, another example, Julia Roberts. Richard Gere believed that she was more than just a streetwalker. And at the end of the movie, she actually did implement herself up or start up to be a respectable woman. Star Wars, another one. Obi-Wan Kenobi believed in Luke Skywalker. And then, of course, throughout the whole theme, what is it? Use the Force. Yes, use the Force. So that's believing in something unknown, unseen, but it's the Force. That's one thing that carries through every single one of the Star Wars movies is the Force. Then you have the Harry Potter series. Of course, Harry Potter had Dumbledore. Dumbledore believed in him. Even when he was at his lowest and didn't know what he was doing, Dumbledore believed in him. And just by having that belief, it made Harry Potter have some form of courage or strength within him. The Karate Kid. Remember the Karate Kid, Mr. Miyagi? I could use Mr. Miyagi on my shoulder right now. But Mr. Miyagi, he believed in, I almost said Ralph Cramden, but that's not his name. Ralph Macchio. To the moon, Alice! So Mr. Miyagi believed in Ralph Macchio's character, so much so he taught him karate, but remember, instilled in him, you don't use this as a weapon, this is to defend yourself. Then, of course, you have NCIS. How can we not mention NCIS? Gibbs believes in his team. Right or wrong, whatever their decision is, he always backs his team. And then, of course, the ultimate one, I was actually done with this list, and Mark goes, you forgot the best one, The Wizard of Oz. Oh, yeah. In that one, all of those characters had something that they did not know they had, but they were searching for. The lion was looking for courage. The Tin Man was looking for a heart. The Scarecrow was looking for a brain, and of course, Dorothy was looking for home. Thank you. And the wizard showed them that it was all within themselves. So I think that's a good pivotal point right there. Now, it doesn't have to just be about the movie industry. The music industry is the same thing. If you listen to some of the songs, we get moved by songs, especially the songs where it has to do with believing in another individual. Now, a piece of music I'm going to play for you. This is Andrea Bocelli. Those of you who don't know, he's an Italian opera singer. Beautiful voice. I have no idea what he's saying, but when he sings, you can feel his soul. But this song, you actually can hear, he does speak part English, part Italian on this one. So if you would, Nicole, just lower the lights. Everyone just close your eyes for a moment. And as you're listening to the song, just think about the idea of believing in another individual. Who have you put your belief in as you listen to the song? Go ahead, Susan. Thank you. You can open your eyes. Ooh, lights. The line that he has in there, we were born to shine. And that, to me, I think, correlates back to the idea of the fire that lies within this. Just on a side note, I saw Andrea Bocelli in concert one year. He was absolutely amazing. And if you closed your eyes, you didn't realize he was blind. Not that blindness does anything, but a blind person stands still, like they don't do any interaction. They just stand there and sing, because that's what he's there for, to sing. But truly, the CDs do absolutely no justice. You have to hear this man's voice in person. It's just phenomenal. There, I just did a plug for him. I wonder if I get any Starbucks credit for that. So then I was thinking of all other music that I know that I've listened to. Of course, all the love songs. They talk about believing in you. Whitney Houston has that one song, I Believe in You and Me. Josh Groban has songs. Billy Gilman, this is one I was thinking of. Does anybody remember Billy Gilman? He hasn't done much since this. Billy Gilman, 2005, I think it was. He was 11 years old. He made the top charts within the top 40, I think. He was the first time he broke a record, first time anyone under the age of 11 or under the age of anything. He was the youngest country music star to ever get on the top 10 Billboard list. His song, One Voice. Do you remember that song, One Voice? Very powerful. Now, the reason why he got there, because so many people identified with it. And it was all about faith and believing in one another. So that's a good picture to show us that even the music industry understands the power of believing in another individual. Of course, you know, the music videos probably help now too. You could actually watch the song unfolding. Of course, I always get a little annoyed when the song unfolds differently than what I had pictured in my mind, but that's the fragmented thinking part. Another workshop. Now, I want to go back to this idea of what's the unknown power that lies within us, which we all possess. Everyone possesses this power of believing in another individual, because that's very powerful when you believe in another individual. Now, of course, I've already expressed when others have believed in me, and I know that there's a philosophy out there that says, oh, you know, the greatest power is when you believe in yourself. I get that. I understand that's a philosophy. I'm just not aligned with that. George taught me through many lessons that the greatest power is when you make a contribution to another. If you get anything in reward, that's one thing, but to make a contribution to another without the intention of having a reward. I've watched him tirelessly, time and time again, give everything he had for the work. I would say he was one of the most humble human beings I've ever met. His life was everything for the benefit of another. And you may have heard me tell these stories that when the first time he had surgery, when he fell down and broke his hip, 2007, he's 70-something years old. It's the first time he's ever had surgery in a hospital, right? So he's 70-something years old, comes out of anesthesia, and his first sentence is, I need to make a contribution to the citizens of this community, and then goes right back to sleep. In anesthesia, that's the first line. So that just gives you an idea of his mind. It was always there, always my contribution. He's laying in a hospital bed, looking around, and how can I make a contribution to these people? He's in the hospital bed, and he's wanting to make a contribution. So for me, the idea that I came with the benefit of another really came from George. He never set the stage for himself. He never made sure he got his in the end. It was always give. He was a true server. Working side by side with him was truly an inspiration, and I learned such a great deal from him. So that's where I come from, the idea that believing in someone else is more powerful than believing in yourself. Now, not saying that you shouldn't believe in yourself. I honestly never think about it. It's just this is what we need to do. Now, do it. I don't stop and think, now, am I believing in myself on this? It doesn't occur to me. When I write a Monday night workshop, do I say, gosh, do I believe it enough to write this workshop? No, I have to write a workshop. Go, do it. So I'm more in the motion of just go do it rather than just believe in it. Not to discount those of you who believe that believing in yourself is powerful. I understand that. I get that. Just not my venue. So just wanted to say that. Now, I have felt the power of when someone believes in me, as I've already mentioned, Art. And then, of course, next up was George. Now, imagine poor George when he first met me back in 1990, fresh from New York, Italian New York smart butt, loudmouth, argued on everything he said. Imagine my first Omega 1 agreements. What are you talking about? What do you think you are to yell at these people? I mean, really, I was not the nicest person in Omega 1, but he flipped my world when I went through the first program. I thought, whoa, where's that little Monopoly man up there? Because he looked like the Monopoly man. Did those of you remember him? He looked like the Monopoly man, didn't he? Just exactly the chance, go. So when I started working with him as a facilitator, I know I gave him a hard time. And it wasn't intentional. I was kicking and screaming because I didn't want to change. I thought I was perfect the way I was. But he saw something in me that I didn't even see. I had no idea I had a flair for philosophy or for reading people or for being able to be in the present moment and feel the moment. I had no idea of any of the gifts that I have right now. I had no idea I had them, but he saw it. And he would tirelessly work with me. I cannot tell you how many hours. We used to drive up to Sedona and back. We'd go up to Sedona, have lunch, and then drive back. And the entire time was looking back, I wish I would have just sat there and went, oh, thank you for sharing. I don't think I ever thanked him for the feedback, the constant feedback that I received 24 hours. It felt like 24 hours a day. I don't think I ever thanked him for that because it really did assist me. He really had the hardest task. But art prepared me for George. Had I not learned about unconditional love and trust, I would have never trusted George. I would have walked in this place, went whatever, and walked out on the first night. So art prepared me for my first step to get to Omega, and then George had the most difficult task. Now, when I think about art, there's a part of me that doubts how important I am to him. He's had a number of students. He's had a number of people come in and out of his life. Why do I stand out? Why would I say just because I feel important? Well, what makes me think that I am important? I call myself his daughter. He used to refer to me as the munchkin because I'm short. So I'd come around the corner. I worked for him on campus. I got a job on campus working for him. I came around the corner one day walking into his office and I hear him say, hey, where's the munchkin? I was like, what? We went around. But then I kind of thought, oh, it's cute. So we kept it that way. His grandchildren call me Aunt Munchkin. They do not know my name. It's Aunt Munchkin. Yeah, we had a good laugh about that one. I went back for their 50th anniversary 10 years ago. I walked into they had it at a hotel, and the grandchildren are now like 20s and 30s. I walk in and all I hear, Aunt Munchkin! I'm like, oh God, it didn't go away. So, the idea that he called me Munchkin, all right, maybe that's nice, but maybe he had nicknames for everyone. Until one day, Joan pulled me aside. I'd given our Father's Day card, and they had all their cards up on the mantle, and I didn't see mine, and I'm glad. I didn't want it to be up there, because I wrote, very personal, I've never been moved, thank you for believing me, blah, blah, blah. So Joan pulled me aside, she said, no, it's not up there. And I went, oh God, thank you. And she just sat down and she said, I just want you to know, you are very important to us, and especially art. And now I'm, ready to cry, because I'm like, ah. And she just said, he's never encountered anybody like you, and he really feels like you are our daughter, and as do I, but you're our daughter. I remember that speech she gave to me. We just sat there on Father's Day, and she just had tears in her eyes, and she thanked me. She said, I brought out a part of art she hadn't seen in a while. And it just was really odd to me that this woman's thanking me for having her husband loving me as a child. I'm like, okay, thanks, Mom. But that's how it was. I mean, it was Mom and Dad. And it's always been Mom and Dad. He always signs every card, love adopted dad, love your adopted Mom and Dad. We just kind of slid right into that. So as I said, he used to tell me I was the daughter he never had. And when I have that doubt, and now, of course, all I have to think about, his youngest daughter is the one who contacted me. I really didn't spend much time with her. I met her occasionally, but she was living in other cities and having a difficult time in her life. But she knew of me and I knew of her. And when we did connect and would see each other when I'd be visiting art and she'd be there, pleasant, but I was really closer to Tracy and Darcy. But Lisa's the one who called me. And Lisa's the one who reached out and said, Anne-Marie, you're the fifth daughter. You need to be here. That just moved me to think, wow, our relationship even affected his children, so much so that they feel like I really am their sister, which just, again, inspiring to me. So, since moving to Arizona, of course, naturally, we're not as close as I was when I was living back there, but as I stated, I have carried on his legacy. And then, of course, now with George, I'm carrying on his legacy. So I have two people that were a big influence in my life that I'm carrying on their legacies. Now what I'd like you to do is find somebody whom you're going to sit and chit-chat with. I'm going to just give you an assignment. I want you to have a dyad and talk about the last time or the time that you can remember when somebody believed in you and what it did for you. So have a conversation with your buddy of when somebody believed in you and what it did for you. Go ahead, please. Stay back there, Kim. You're going to talk again.
Okay. Now that I'm here.
So you had an opportunity to talk to your buddy about what it was like when somebody believed in you. And if I could have recorded your faces, I wish you would have seen there's smiles, a little gleaming in your eye, a little bit of energy comes into play as well. Because that's really does occur. There's that energy transference. I heard this gentleman say, my first question is why? Why are you believing in me? So it makes me think about not touching the microphone anymore. It makes me think about how when people believe us, the difference it makes in us. Now, of course, I told you about Art and Joan. Did you lose me? No. Okay. I want to tell you another person who really made a big influence and impact in my life. Her name was Shirley. Many of you may not remember her. Doyle, you might remember Shirley Karras. Shirley was a very wealthy woman who came through Omega years and years ago. She was so moved by this program. She bought a building up on Desert Cove in Peoria. She bought a building. It was an empty shell. And all of us raised money to build the inside. Well, I wasn't here yet, but they raised money and created the inside, just like we did here. We built it from the inside up. They had an auction where there was another wealthy man who said, if you raise $50,000, I'll match it. They did. They raised $50,000. He sent in $50,000. So they had $100,000 to build the inside of this building. It was beautiful. Shirley, very wealthy, very powerful woman. She also, not only did she buy the building, but she rented it to us for a real. She bought the building just for Omega and then rented us at a very cheap rate. We were in a corporate district and we were paying really money. I mean, we had a huge building. Those of you remember the main room was like maybe 4 times the size of this room. It's huge. We used to have, George would do his study groups in there and we'd have upwards of 250 people in the room itself, in the big room. Anyway, when I first met Shirley, I was on board doing the teen program, and she was this little grandma old lady. I didn't know who she was. She was like this little grandma lady, you want to just pinch her cheeks, and she's going to bring you cookies or something like that. Very sweet, pleasant. I had no idea she was a billionaire. So it was my first introduction to a very wealthy woman. But the thing that moved me, both her and her husband, were the sweetest, kindest, gentlest people I've ever met. I've always heard that rich people were mean and all about their money and everything. Shirley never was. It never was about the money with Shirley. When I would be with her, she had a house up in Sedona. I'd go and stay there. She loved my family, my brother. We'd go and spend weekends up there with her. We were family. It was just family. It didn't matter. Just family. She would tell me stories about how people would invite her to lunch, and then when the check came in, they just hand the check to her, assuming just because she's wealthy, she should pay. She'd be like, what? So once she told me that story, you know what happened, and that's every time we go to lunch, we'd fight over the check. We've ripped the check in half so many times, it's not even funny. So sometimes we try to rip it so that, oh, I have a 2, you have a 1, okay, let's do it that way. But I never wanted her to think that I was with her because of the money, which I wasn't. I really enjoyed her company. And she had a lot of faith in me. When we were reconstructing and redesigning the program, we were doing Delta, a lot of her inspiration, a lot of mine came from her. Oh, Anne-Marie, that's a good idea, we should go with that. Like she was on the board, very influential. So she really made a contribution to me. I very rarely talk about her, but loved her to death. Remember when I went through the last surgery I had in 2000, here's this really wealthy woman, she sends me a little care package, and inside is this little teddy bear, a teddy bear nurse and a teddy bear doctor. We're taking care of you. Like, and that's her present to me. Is a little teddy bear doctor, but it was cute. It was priceless. Like, where did she find those? It was adorable. Put them on my nightstand. There they are. You guys are here watching after me. But really, truly made an impact on me. And her daughters, I was quite familiar with too. So like, it was the same thing like Art, except out here. Now, you had an opportunity to talk to your buddy about the power of what it's like when somebody believes in you. I want to switch it now to the power of when you believe in another individual, because that is more powerful. I want to say it's more powerful than when somebody believes in you. I've had this experience. when you believe. Now, I'm not saying, it's like I believe in my staff. When the staff comes up to do the training, I believe in them. I trust them. I don't even think about it. They're going to do their job. Susan has got the handle. She's got my life. I'm fine. I believe in the facilitators. When Nicole stands up, I remember since she just walked out, I could talk about her. I remember the first time she stood up in front of the room, she was terrified. And I remember I just stood there and looked in her eyes and said, you can do this. I know you can do this. And it may not have made the fear go away, but she walked out there and started. I just remember that moment. I've been at Nicole's, a lot of her moments. I was at her high school graduation. Here's this kid, high school graduation. On the graduation, we're on the field. She just get done graduating. They're about to load on the bus to go to the graduation things, whatever the kids go to, the overnight things. She borrows my phone to call George to make an appointment to be in facilitator training or something. 18-year-old, of course, that's what every 18-year-old does. Let me talk to George. I was moved by that. I was at her college graduation. Again, very moving. I remember Susan and I actually were there with George, and she got up there and actually embarrassed me, but she thanked us all for the support and love that she felt from us, which I never really expressed. I just have always, that kid has got my heart. So when she first stepped out on the floor, I knew she was going to be fine. So I remember when I took her skydiving too. That was amazing. It never occurred to me that she might die. Oh no, I'm taking Nicole skydiving. Don't worry about it. It's all good. And just the sheer joy on her face. So that's simple things of believing. And of course we talked about believing in our children and our friends and loved ones. But when you believe in strangers, now this one blows me away. The power of believing in someone. The event that comes to my mind, probably the most impactful event I had, I was standing on a cliff ready to rappel. In the interim of Delta and Omega, I started a program where I took kids doing outdoor adventures. So we're going to go rappelling. I've never rappelled in my life, but I'm pretending I know what I'm doing. And we have a bunch of guys that know what they're doing, so I've got about 30 kids with us. I don't know any of them. There's just 30 kids. We're up on this cliff. It's about 50-foot drop-off, maybe. Sheer face down. Anybody in here ever rappel? No. It's a lot of fun, actually. Once you go over. But looking down, you're like, oh my goodness gracious. So I'm hooked up in a harness, and they have 3 lines. So I'm hooked in the harness, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to go down once and see how it is. And, I'm watching the kids go down. And I look, and when I see this scene, it's like it goes in slow motion. It's a 12-year-old girl, blonde hair, biggest blue eyes I've ever seen, standing next to me. She looks up at me. There are tears in her eyes. Her lip is trembling. She is white as a ghost. And she just looks at me with and she barely could get the words out, but she said, please go down with me. Now, I've done team trainings before, and I know when you're in front of the room, the kids get attached to you and everything, but I hadn't done anything with this group yet. This was our first, so we had no bonding thing going on. So as far as she could know, I was Charles Manson, and she's asking me to go down the mountain with her. But she didn't. It's like she looked to me, and I'll never forget that moment, that this young kid is looking to me for strength. And I just remember looking back at her and said, honey, you're going to be fine. You can do this, and I will not leave your side. So we took a deep breath, and we went off. There is no price that you can pay to see that transformation in someone's face. There's no price. There's no reward. To watch her go from terrified to absolute sheer joy. What we did is when we went down, I took a couple of steps and I bounced off of the rock a couple of times just to let her know that everything was okay. Meanwhile, I'm about to pee my pants because I'm so scared. But I'm smiling. Oh, look what you can do. And I'm bouncing. The ropes were the size of my finger. They're not very thick. So I'm bouncing, and then I went down a little bit lower and swung underneath her. And if you've ever rappelled, or if you've seen people rappel, it really is you're just sitting down with your feet on the rock. That's all you're really doing. So I went underneath her, and I said, just sit down in my lap. So she sat in my lap, and I said, just walk on my feet. And we walked a couple of times, and then I started doing goofy breakdancing moves, and she started laughing. And about 10 feet later, she was good. I swung out from her, and she started swinging, and we started out. We probably gave the guys below a little nervous thing because we're swinging all over the place. But then we raced. The 30 feet left, this kid had so much courage. She said, I'll race you down. And she took off. I'm still scared. And she took off. I'm watching her go down going, oh my God, I'm by myself now. Wait! And she beat me. She got down there and beat me. When I got down there, just the biggest joy. She gave me the biggest hug I can remember. But just the joy of seeing her face transformed and knowing I was a part of that. Because I believed in her. By the simple act of saying, I believe in you, we're going to do this together, gave her the strength and courage. I never knew that. Never knew it until I had that experience. When you watch that in somebody's eyes, it's almost like it shouldn't be talked about. It feels miraculous. It's like watching a miracle unfold before you. Now, those of you who've been in the training with me, you've seen me work one-on-one with people. And sometimes we'll have huge breakthroughs. And the people will just stand there, and you guys don't get to see it because I'm looking face-to-face with them. You might see their backs of the heads or their sides of the faces. But I can feel the moment when they shift and trust me. I've had people stand up and do a trust fall. I could feel that moment when they do it. You see it in their eyes, and you could just feel it. It's honorable and noble to know that somebody would trust you that much, that they would surrender. So I feel blessed that I get to do this in the classroom. I get to see it. I get to feel it. But it made me think about what are people who aren't in classrooms? What about people who don't have that day in and day out experience? Do you get to have the experience of believing in someone and see their life transform? Not the arrogance of look what I did, but wow, I was a part of that. That's what I'd like you to do now, is have a conversation with your buddy about the people that you've believed in and felt that transfer, where they shifted to courage because of your beliefs. So go ahead, talk to your buddy about that. Now, I don't want you to leave your buddy because I'm actually going to set you up to do a dyad. But before we do this, I want you to just think about right now the idea of talking to your buddy about what it's like when you believe in somebody. And the feeling of when somebody believes in you, whether it instills courage or a warm feeling, a sense of belonging, a feeling of being valuable, not being so alone. And whatever the definition is within you, doesn't matter if there's a specific one, but just think about that strength. Most of you should feel some sense of elatedness, I would state. So, what I'd like you to do is with the person you're talking to, I actually want you to now change your chairs so you're face to face with them. So face to face with your buddy.
Yeah, let's spread out.
We're going to pick an A and a B. A's are the people who are at the mirror. Sorry. B's are the people facing the walls. You guys just have to change. There you go. So A's are the ones facing the mirrors, and B's are the ones facing the wall. We're just going to do a STEM sentence. I want you to establish eye contact, look into your buddy's eyes. Please resist the temptation to start giggling and laughing. I really want you to just feel this. So I'm going to go a little bit longer just to give you a sensation of what we're going to go through here. So establishing eye contact. B's, the ones facing the wall, you'll nonverbal hold the eye contact. A's, the ones looking into your buddy's eyes. STEM sentence. All you have to do is say, I believe in you. That's it. I believe in you. Again, nice, gentle, not, I believe in you, I believe in you. And or, I believe in you. None of that. Just look into your buddy's eyes, thinking about the power of believing in an individual. Here's somebody you've been sitting and talking to for a little over an hour now. This is an individual, a human being, another person just like you. So here's a person who shared with you of when people have believed in them and when they have believed in others. So looking into your buddy's eyes, calling that forward, really, honestly, simply state, I believe in you. And continue to do so until I ask you to stop. B's, nonverbal again, just hold the eye contact. Go ahead and begin. May I have your attention, please? You don't need to adjust your chairs, but I'd like to hear from some of you. What was that experience like for you? Yes, ma'am.
For me, saying it was a little more awkward to hear everyone around you saying it, so it was like, oh, I'm saying what everybody else is saying, but it's the way you communicate with your eyes and just how you feel in your heart. You're saying that to them.
So Patricia, would you say that when you were looking and saying it, could you feel your gaze be a little bit stronger, more connected?
I definitely felt there was a point you could feel the switch where it stopped being silly and it started being more open.
All right, excellent. Someone else. Yes, Kim.
When I was receiving it from Penny, there was a time that tears actually started welling in my eyes. That I felt it that much, that energy. And then when I was telling Candy I believed in her, I felt that I really believed in her. I just met her tonight. So.
She's a good person to believe in. Yes, ma'am.
We notice that too, a sense of vulnerability as you allow the words to really have an impact.
So, knowing that you're a couple, how often have you had this exchange?
Well, I don't know if that's true.
I think we've had the exchange without sometimes being
But Kurt, have you ever sat there and said, I believe in you? Do you remember that?
the actual words.
Yeah, just curious, just because I know you're a couple.
I believe I have.
I believe. Sorry. Yeah, all right. But been a while. I'm assuming it's been a while since you're struggling to come up with a moment of it, which not a right or wrong thing.
Specific.
Yeah. But again, like you said, there's a sense of vulnerability, especially when couples do this. It brings it up a little bit closer, doesn't it? Yeah. Excellent. All right. I just have to pick on you guys. Are you a couple? All right. So how did you guys do?
You go.
I was feeling funny at the start, but I was feeling it's good to be with her, like seeing eye to eye and exchanging, that I believe in her, and I do believe in her. But inside of my heart, I know that.
Yeah. All right.
Well, I mean, when you brought it up with them, that was something we had been talking about, how we'll be married we will be married 9 years this December, and I don't think we ever, talk about it like this. We never talk about believing in each other.
So he's the husband. No, I'm kidding. But you said you never had a conversation like that where you just flat out said, I believe in you.
No, he may have said it once. Basically, so when he started telling me that he believed in me, I was like, oh, I am sure you don't believe in me, and so on. And then as he said it more times, I remember the one incident when he actually said that, like, oh, if there is anybody who can lose weight after pregnancy, that is you, and I believe that you can do it. And I mean, not that it was a major thing, whatever, whether it was big for me because I was on bed rest and everything, and I was like, I didn't think I could do it, and I think, that made me remember that.
I think a lot of times when we exchange a lot of like verbal communication, at that time it's not being said in English, but we say it in our normal speaking language that I believe in you,
Mhm.
that this is going to happen. So,
And then would you say that doing this exercise right now, the intensity of the eyes increased as well?
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Excellent. Thank you for sharing. Someone else. Yes, sir.
I felt awkward at first, but I felt like once I dropped that wall and I let that awkwardness down, and I looked into her eyes and I told her it. Once I believed what I was saying, that I believed in her, I felt like she reflected it back to me. So I felt, it might sound weird, but I felt like I was talking to myself. Like I felt like I gave it to her, but then she shot it right back at me. And she was saying without even saying it to me before she said it. And it was just as strong, almost just as strong as when she looked me in the eyes and said
So remind me of your name again.
Eric.
Eric. So Eric, would you say that until you actually believed your words, it was just shallow? But once you believed in them, it became more intense and profound, powerful. Excellent, thank you. Someone else? Yes, Sharon.
That was a beautiful experience, very much so. I could just feel the strength coming from Judy and infusing into me. And then when it was my turn to say that to her, it's like I wanted to let her know that I really believed in what she had to say to me, but then I believed in all the things that she can do and all the strength that she has.
Uh-huh. Excellent, thank you. Anyone else? And yes, sir.
It feels good to believe, and it feels good to be believed in.
Wonderful, well said, I agree. Yes, it's a good balance, isn't it? Yes, excellent. All right, so I wanted you to have that experience. Now, remember, this feeling that you have right now, I must mention this, the opposite side, there are people who will take advantage of this. They will say, I believe in you to capture you. The vampires will live off of you. Oh, I believe in you. I believe you have the strength and you can help me through this. And before you know it, You're standing by them for everything. You're on the phone with them all the time. You're healing their wounds. You're taking care of their life. So word of caution, just beware of this. Not saying that it will always happen, but beware. There are people who are predators. It's out there. And as an example, I went through and started thinking about the negative effect that this can happen. Because you feel this way right now, people can be misled. You can be easily misled because you feel this warm feeling inside right now, and you can follow anyone. Think about the DC sniper. One guy who had a kid with him and really implemented, oh no, this is what you gotta do. You gotta kill these people. And before you know it, a 13-year-old is a sniper. He didn't say one day, I want to be a sniper, let's go shoot people. He was influenced. The Boston bombing, the same thing. That younger brother, completely influenced by his older brother, because he wanted to feel that neededness and belonging, and somebody believed in him. Of course, any introduction to gangs, so I've worked with gangs before, so initiation in a gang is always violent and harmful. So there's something about the gang believing in them that gives this kid strength enough that he can hurt somebody just to belong to a gang. You'll cross your values just for that sensation, of feeling of belonging. Of course, the horrible thing about the child soldiers in Uganda. They're taken from their beds, and that they're taught hate, and unfortunately they grow up hating as well. And of course, you could look at countries. North Korea hates the United States because of, and every citizen is under the influence of I shouldn't say every citizen. There are instances where a leader can make an entire country hate another country. So there is great power here. With any sense of power, there's a sense of responsibility. So back to the idea of you believing in another individual. If we take this as a power, we can understand that we can ignite a flame. When we see someone struggling, just that power of believing in them might fuel their fire and make them have that experience as well. But it's not for us. We don't sit there and go, I'm going to believe in you so that you can come back and tell me how wonderful I am, and not touch my mic. Tell me how wonderful I am, and all praise me. That's one key of why George put this program together the way he did. There is no membership here. You do not belong here. And if you start praising us, we will disappear. We don't want the praise. It's not about us. It's about you. It is always about the individuals come through. That's why there's never been a great, let's recognize the great leaders of Omega. It's about the people. Always has been about the people. So when you think about this, the power that you have within you is great power. Some of us haven't even tapped into it yet, of the idea of believing in another individual. So just this one brief dia that you had, 2-3 minutes, imagine if you started doing that on a daily basis. What would your world look like? What would the people in your life look like? Who can you make a contribution to? If you desire to make contributions, who can you make a contribution? Just a small instance of what you had right now. Imagine that on a daily basis. That's beautiful. I think that would be a tremendous change in our society if we started doing that. If we truly felt it from our heart. Now I'm quoting, I'm going to get me off the soapbox here, but I think that the power of believing is it's untapped in many people. It's untapped. We haven't really grabbed hold of it and made it be part of our essence. I have been fortunate enough to be around people who are exuberant and believing in people and feeling that power from them. So I wanted you to have just a moment, an experience of what it's like to feel that power as well. That exists within you. You can create that anytime you want in your life. Any day, any situation, you can create that. So, with that said, I'll simply say, I believe in you. Have a good evening. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you.